Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's moving to impose limitations on religious organizations with links to Russia. He made the comments during his nightly address on Thursday, saying that the parliament would take up the issue. Now, Ukraine's religious ties to Russia go back centuries, but in May, the war prompted the Moscow-backed branch of Ukraine's Orthodox Church to sever ties with Moscow. Let's cross now to our Kyiv correspondent, Gulliver Craig. Gulliver, so when Zelensky talks about imposing limitations on religious organizations, what exactly is he talking about?
Well, basically, he's talking about the Moscow Patriarchate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and its more than 10,000 parishes in Ukraine, including the Kiev Caves Monastery, the Lavra behind me, one of the most important sites in Orthodox Christianity. Now, as you said, the Moscow Patriarchate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church said that it was severing ties with Moscow after the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine began in February. But many in Ukraine doubt whether that's really the case, especially after, over the last 10 days, a series of raids on this monastery and many others across the country revealed that some priests, at least, had on them various pro-Russian materials, including books denying the existence of Ukraine as a state or the concept of Ukrainians as a nation, basically materials that the Ukrainian authorities and the Ukrainian security services who carried out the raids deem to be elements of Russian propaganda, and they believe basically these churches, some of them at least, to be agents of Russian influence in Ukraine, and therefore in the current context of the Russian war against Ukraine, that they need to be clamped down upon. And this, if it goes ahead, but it's a complicated thing to do. The decree that Volodymyr Zelensky signed today just asks the cabinet to work on the question and perhaps submit a bill to Parliament within 2 months. If it goes ahead, it will be a huge change because despite the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, out of around 12,000 parishes that belong to the Moscow Patriarchate, so far, I think only less than 1,500, if I'm not mistaken, have so far crossed over to the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Autocephalous Ukrainian Church that was created in 2019. So it's really a very, very large number of parishes that still belong to the Moscow-affiliated Patriarchate, and there's a very different sort of range of different people who are priests in these parishes, some of whom perhaps are pro-Russian, others who just think that they are serving God and don't really believe that the ties to Moscow are so real. But there's also huge amounts of financial questions to be looked into, and the question of the property. I mean, what analysts have been saying this morning is that if Ukraine were to ban the Moscow Patriarchate of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, then it would have to nationalize its property, including obviously extraordinarily very valuable property like the monastery behind me.
And meanwhile, as for what's happening on the ground, Gulliver, we understand there have been continued Russian strikes on Kherson in the south.
Yes, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, actually stated yesterday that Russia, although it considers Kherson to be its territory, having annexed Kherson region along with 3 other regions at the end of September, it would be continuing to attack the city. And Sergei Lavrov compared the situation to the situation with Stalingrad, which Russia bombed while it was occupied by Nazi Germany during the Second World War, despite considering it to be its own territory. So no sign of any let-up for the residents of Kherson, who were so happy, if you remember those explosions of joy a couple of weeks ago when Ukrainian forces took the city back from under Russian occupation. So the situation there is very difficult, and in the wider region as well, there's still a lot of areas that are mined. One civilian was killed this morning after driving over an anti-tank mine, prompting the Ukrainian authorities to renew their warnings to residents of all areas that have been freed from under Russian occupation to be extremely careful about the possibility of mines.